This pavlova is a celebration of the classic Aussie kids treat, fairy bread. Fun and packed full of sprinkles, this pavlova is crispy on the outside and marshmallow-like on the inside. It's topped with a mound of freshly whipped cream, sprinkles, and little cake cubes that are covered in sprinkles. So much fun and simply delicious for those with a sweet tooth. Today we're going to begin by cleaning our mixing bowl. Now today I'm using a glass bowl, but if you don't have one of these you can use a metal bowl. I would steer clear from using a plastic bowl because that can tend to be hard to clean fat residue off, and we're actually going to be just double checking that our glass bowl is clean by adding some vinegar and wiping the inside of the bowl. That way our egg whites don't have any fat mixed in with them, which is going to prevent them from whipping up properly. Once you've cleaned your bowl, add your egg whites, and we're going to whip these up using a whisk attachment. If you're not going to use a stand mixer, you can just use a hand mixer. Whip these up until they're nice and frothy, a couple minutes. And once you reach stiff peaks, you're going to be adding caster sugar, which is also known as superfine sugar, 1 tablespoon at a time. The reason why we want to add this slowly is because we want to slowly introduce it into the egg whites, give it some time to dissolve before you add the rest. If you don't let your caster sugar dissolve in the egg whites, you might have seepy looking pavlova once it bakes. Now that all of our caster sugar is in there, we're going to let this continue whipping for about 5 or 6 minutes. It's going to go really thick and glossy, and you shouldn't feel any sugar grains in there either. Add some vanilla extract and about a teaspoon of white vinegar. The white vinegar is going to help give us that marshmallowy inside. Whisk that in for about 30 seconds and this is done. Now to prepare your baking tray, we're actually going to be tracing around about a 6-inch circle anything. I'm using a bowl. I'm actually using a permanent texture to trace around it. Now don't worry, it's not going to end up on our pavlova because we're going to flip this over. That way it is pen side down. Now a good way to help prevent your baking paper from flying around in the oven while your beautiful pavlova, which I'm going to show you how to shape in a second, is baking. We're going to add little bits of meringue on each corner of the baking tray, and that's going to help stick the baking paper down. Add your pavlova mixture on top of that circle. Try and keep within the circle. This is where your kindergarten skills come in handy. Now, we're just going to take our time with this. We want to slowly add it all on there, kind of shape it slowly into kind of like a cake shape. So nice straight edges around the sides and flat top. Then we're going to use a spatula to kind of do what I'm doing on screen. I don't know what to call this, but we're just giving it a little bit of decoration. Once you finish doing that, this is going to go in the oven to bake for 90 minutes. Do not, under any circumstances, open the door while it's baking. Your pavlova will collapse. Do not open the door once it's finished baking. Your pavlova will collapse. You want to let this cool down in the oven completely. Some recipes will say to let it cool down for an hour and then it's okay to come out. I like to keep it in there until it's cooled down completely. So make sure you have nothing else to bake that day. Let it cool and do its own thing, and you get a nice crispy shell that way as well. We're going to have ganache on top of our pavlova. So we're going to add some white chocolate and cream to a heat-proof bowl. We're going to microwave this for 30 seconds at a time, stirring each time until it's smooth. Let's make those little fairy bread cake cubes. So to make the glaze, we're going to be adding some powdered sugar, melted butter, and boiling water into a bowl. You're going to whisk that together until it's nice and smooth. Then I'm going to be using some vanilla sponge cake, which I'm going to cut into cubes. We're going to dip about 2 of those at a time in the bowl and let them drain well before you put them in a bowl of sprinkles. Now today I'm using a classic Aussie sprinkle called Hundreds and Thousands. If you don't have these, you can use pretty much any sprinkle you like, but this is what we use for fairy bread. Once you've done all those cake cubes, set them aside and just let them set because that glaze is still slightly wet. The last thing we want to do is prepare our heavy cream or whipped cream. So we're going to be adding some heavy cream to a large mixing bowl along with some caster sugar and vanilla bean paste. You're going to whip that up to soft peaks, and then you're going to add some pink food gel and whip it up to stiff peaks. Our pavlova is perfectly baked. Now, lifting it up is easy because I just use the baking paper. You want to very carefully transfer it to your serving plate and get rid of that baking paper. We're going to finish this off by drizzling it with that white chocolate ganache, which, by the way, you don't want it to be warm. You want it to be at room temperature. I fitted the end of a piping bag with an open star tip, and we're going to pipe some swirls of cream on top. Then we're going to sprinkle it with some hundreds and thousands before we finish it with the little fairy bread cake cubes. Guys, I would recommend decorating this right before you're ready to serve. Otherwise, the cream's going to kind of deflate and the fairy bread cubes on top are quite heavy. So it's going to kind of cause this not to look so fantastic. If you want to grab the recipe, it's on my website, thescranline.com. Thank you so much for joining me in my kitchen today. There are other videos on this channel that you can watch right now, so click on screen and keep on watching. I'll see you all on the next episode of the Scran Line. By the way, look how marshmallowy the inside of that pavlova is. I mean, God, it's good.